unfortunately were eliminated
Yeah.
last week.
They lose handily 118-94 in Sacramento. That means the season is over. Where it says upcoming, I usually put in our show doc the next games for the next week. I put 2024-25 season in October, crying emoji. So the season is really and truly done. The Kings went on to play in New Orleans and they lost that game. So your 7 seed in the West is the Lakers, who beat the Pelicans, and then the 8 seed is the Pelicans, who got revenge against the Kings. So that's kind of how the playoff play-in tournament broke down in the West, at least.
Yeah. We all predicted the Warriors would win, thinking that championship DNA would show up, and it did not.
No,
The
not at all.
Warriors looked old, slow, unmotivated. Clay literally couldn't buy a shot.
Yeah,
So if that's his
yeah,
last game in a Warrior uniform, what a awful, sad way to go out.
it's tough. It's tough
Um,
to think about that.
Specifically about this game, Vince, what did you think about the game
So
itself?
Tyrion Jackson Davis, he just looked lost early on, and then Kerr pulled him, and that was basically it for him. He didn't feel like he could trust him to put him back out there. He is a rookie center after all, and centers do take the longest to develop. So it kind of surprised me that he didn't get another chance really until the game was well out of hand late in the fourth quarter. I would have liked to have seen him coach him up a little bit on the sidelines and then maybe give him one more shot at it because he was so dynamic throughout the regular season. He stole Looney's job from him,
Yeah.
uh, and he just didn't get another chance though. That was a real short leash, and I don't know, man. I would have liked to have seen if he could have learned on the fly. That's one of the things that Kerr doesn't really give his rookies a long leash. If they start messing up, they're done. So, and for it during the regular season, I get that, and even in the playoffs, I get that too. But this was like the game was getting out of hand pretty quickly, and the Warriors needed a jump and needed a spark. And he's somebody while he was making mistakes on the defensive side, he can provide that spark as well. So I wish he would have gotten a little bit more run.
Yeah, absolutely. I kind of agree with many of the young players. Moody wasn't going to really get any playing time in this game, and he was one of the few players that looked decent. I think that's kind of been a question with Warriors fans, right? Like, how come Moody never gets any consistent run? It seems like whenever he is put in a position to come off the bench or start or wherever, he plays hard. He's high energy. He tries to be a spark. He does his job. It seems like he's greatly improved, but for whatever reason, it seems like Moses Moody can't even like get in the good graces of Coach Kerr. So a lot of people are talking about how come Moody doesn't get any run. Um, I think he's a player that we've wanted to see over the past few years. Um, Kaminga didn't look very good himself. Didn't look bad, just looked kind of average. Um, the whole team looked that way during this Keems game. It just did not look very competitive. Um, Seems like the Kings maybe, not that the players were celebrating, but the Kings they died shortly after. So no teams went to the playoffs in this bracket. Going back to the Warriors, what do you think we're going to do going forward? Is this the end of the big three? What do you do? Where are
Um,
we at with it?
Obviously, at this point, they're not going to pay Clay a lot. Clay just he's not the same as much as we wish he was. He's just not the same. He's not since those injuries. And they did pay him before those injuries, and he's made a ton of money from the Warriors and then endorsements and everything. He's on Subway commercials like Steph. So in terms of actual like money, I don't think the Warriors are going to pay him a lot. That's where I think he could end up going elsewhere. I mean, I put in our show doc Dallas and Orlando in particular are two teams that might be interested in a shooter, especially somebody that could that's a future Hall of Famer. If he's still good enough to play in the league, obviously he just had a really
Absolutely.
bad night. Um, having somebody like that on your bench, you can come in like kind of what Kyle Korver did at the end of his career. I think that's kind of where Clay is now. I think is probably the Kyle Korver
So, like,
shooting
your
expert.
key word bench, you think, Clay is a bench player at this point moving forward?
I think so. If he stays on the Warriors, he has to be. I think
Right.
because the younger players are better now than like Patrick Baldwin and Pat McCaw and whoever the hell else we had in the last few years. Like these guys are a lot better on the bench, and so
My
yeah,
first question to you was gonna be, what do you do with the big 3? Do the Warriors try to run it back, meaning the big 3, right?
mhm,
Steph, Clay,
yeah.
Draymond.
I
You're
think if the
answering the
price is
Clay part, right? I think
yeah,
he's gonna walk.
I
I
think
just
he
think
gets more money.
financially
Yeah.
financially, it doesn't make sense to pay him,
Mhm.
especially with they've been in the luxury tax penalty for how many years now?
Tons of years.
Um,
Like, yeah, the last 5 at least. I mean,
so
no,
it sounds
actually, we're
like
talking 7?
you let Clay walk. Sounds like you're letting, Chris Paul explore his
Well, ye
exit, right?
yeah, well, Chris Paul has a player option, so he
Right,
would have to opt out, and, we'll
and I
see
think
if
he
he does
will.
that or not. Yeah, if he can get, a 2-year contract from somebody else, I think he will as well.
I th
Um,
Well, I think somebody we saw a tweet come through that he met with the Spurs or he's interested in opting out and talking to the Spurs. I think a young team,
mhm,
would pay him would allow him to be a starter, where if he's with
yeah,
the Warriors, he's not gonna start. So I think
right.
somewhere he can go and start would be the biggest thing. Maybe he makes less money, but he's gonna start.
Yeah, that's true too.
So,
That's a good point. It's the first time he
Draymond,
hasn't been a starter. Draymond's not going anywhere. Draymond's staying put. It's sort of the whole package with Draymond. He's otherworldly, IQ basketball wise, and then you also get all the outbursts and the idiocy, the little idiot
the flaws,
moves that he
the
sometimes
flaws.
does. Yeah, watch your balls. um,
Right,
so yeah, Draymond's not going anywhere because he's way more valuable to the Warriors than he is to any other new team, and nobody else wants to pay Draymond the contract that he's making right now. So he's staying put.
I agree
Obviously,
with you
Steph is
there, yeah.
retiring a Warrior. Steph is not going anywhere. They'll never let that happen. Um, so
Yeah, I agree with you on Draymond. I think, like, the contract is too rich. I don't think anybody's gonna do the Warriors any favors and take it off their hands.
yeah,
Um, so I do think the Warriors are gonna be stuck with Draymond, whether there was a option or not. Like, nobody's gonna help him out and take Draymond. Um, young players, do you think there's some young players that you would move off of to retain some talent back? Or where's this franchise at? Because it kind of, for me, it feels like if you can't get another star in here to like truly be that flagship superstar, we know Steph Curry is still really good, Draymond's still pretty good, but clearly this team needs a second that needs a legit superstar. They don't have that right now. They need help. Um, is that Kaminga? Is that somebody else on the roster?
I mean, I would hope it ends up being Kaminga. I mean, you still have Andrew Wiggins too. I mean, and I don't know what you do with him.
You gotta
I
get
don't
rid of Wiggins, right? That's like the first
like.
trade that you're trying to do is probably unload Wiggins, but statistically, he had his worst year this year.
Yeah, his trade value is down a lot, and I don't know what you're going to be able to get for him. And you're definitely not getting a superstar for him. You'd have to trade away a lot of other pieces along with him in order to get rid of him. He'd have to be the throw in to like make the money right or whatever.
You're trading him and somebody's eating that bad contract and they're gonna say, well, we want pods or
Hmm.
you know,
Or TJD or somebody. Yeah,
exactly. They're gonna want something of value in return.
one of the young rookies. Yeah, they may even like want Kuminga as well. I don't know, but he's the one like that you're trying to get more playing time for, right? By moving Wiggins, so that's probably a non-starter as
My
well.
feeling is is that they're gonna bring back Clay Thompson. Somehow
Okay.
they're gonna bring him back, and you're gonna see Steph, Clay, Draymond, Coach Kerr go out all in the same year, all their contracts minus Clay are timed up to exit at the same time. So I think when it's blown up for everyone. Like everyone is gone.
So basically, we're running it for 2 more years, is what you're saying?
I think so.
Yeah.
That's not like I just
Oh,
think that's what's going to happen,
okay.
and I think we're just going to be kind of competing for the 10, the 9,
Yeah, I
if
mean,
that.
if things bounce right, you maybe get up to the 6, you know?
Right.
Um,
Maybe some of these younger guys take great leaps. I mean, like you said, a big man, they kind of mature later.
mhm.
Your seems to be really promising right now. So maybe by year 2, year 3, maybe that big man is really, really good.
Mhm.
Maybe
Yeah.
Pods is a starter and maybe Moody's a starter, Kaminga's a starter, and
Mhm.
you can't deny these guys anymore because they're taking over. And now you got Draymond and Clay coming off the bench and minimal minutes from Curry because of age. But to me, that just seems like where the Warriors are going is they're just gonna ride this thing out a year too late.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I could definitely see that happening. I'm not gonna push back on that, and if I'm totally honest, I don't wanna see Clay in another jersey, like, personally. I think that would hurt my heart to, like, go to a Warriors game, on Clay, like when Clay Thompson returns, if he like signs with Dallas or whatever, that first game with Dallas coming to San Francisco. I mean, I would love to be in that audience, but that would hurt my heart a lot to see the screen, like all the highlights and stuff, and just like the 37-point nuclear third quarter against the Kings. When was it, like a dozen years ago? And just like all of these little moments, that's it would be very bittersweet to see that. I
I
want to
just
see that for a jersey retirement.
Yeah,
That's
I
when I
feel
want
you.
to see that. I don't want to see that before he's retired.
I just don't know, I really don't know what the Warriors can do to improve to be a legit top 3 team competing for a finals.
Right. I will say, like, their record this year as the 10 was actually better than their record last year as the 6. So, like, the entire conference got a lot better as well, this past season. So it just, like, I wonder if maybe it corrects a little bit and 46 wins get you back to a 6 seed, next year. I don't know. It just kind
Yeah.
of depends. Like, the teams at the bottom were really, really shit. And maybe with Memphis, with John Morant coming back from the injury, maybe they don't lose nearly as many games, and that just kind of brings everybody else back to the pack a little
Yeah,
bit.
I think they'll be right back in there. I mean,
Exactly.
they're a young
So,
team and he's a superstar whether you
mm,
like his off-court stuff or not. He balls out.
yeah,
So,
he's an irritant if he's not on your team,
yeah.
for sure.
Yeah, Edward Gabrielson, Draymond did have a better year this year, but again, the antics, there's how many games did he miss and how many of those games could have potentially put you up a little bit more in the
Mhm.
standings if you win, if he's there.
Yeah, I mean, I think they ended up, what, 3 games out of the 6th seed or something like that?
Right.
Like 3 or 4
So
games? And he missed enough games that I think he would have made the difference. So,
definitely. You'll never know at this point, but
yeah,
it's definitely as these playoffs come to a close in about a month or so. It seems like these playoffs get longer.
right.
Uh, can't For us, I think we're very excited to see what's going to happen in Warriors offseason, um, because this is potentially the end of the run. Vince, we're old enough to remember what this Warriors franchise was before Steph Curry, Klay Thompson, and Draymond Green,
Mhm.
and it's scary. We know what that was like when we were, "Oh, maybe we'll get to 20 wins. Maybe we'll get to 30." Remember when it
Right.
was, like, exciting when we got to 30?
Yeah, 30, this team's not, yeah. This team is, like, not the worst.
Yeah,
Yay!
like, I remember when we got to, like, 30 something wins.
Mhm.
It w
Yeah, you hit
oh, like
35, I was like, "You know what? Great. I'll take the 35-win season."
right.
And now, yeah.
So, there's no, with professional sports, there's hardly ever a storybook ending that wraps up a franchise in individual players. Um, Usually a player will get the swan song by themselves at the end of the career, a walk-off homer, a game-winning shot, whatever, then they're gone. But as a whole team, we're not going to have perfect endings to each individual player's career. And we're already seeing that a little bit with Clay. Like, the injuries have robbed him of 3 years and everything after the injuries. I know early on we averaged out his 3-pointers made in the 2 years that he missed, and he would, you average that out, he would be like number 2 all time behind Steph, and he's most likely not gonna get there. Still a Hall of Fame player, but he was robbed of being number 2 behind
Yeah.
his running mate, because of those injuries, and it's not gonna be a storybook ending, um, for everyone, and this is the end of the Warriors, it appears, as far as the superstars.